All right, hello and welcome to Inside the Memorial, a little behind the curtains of our War Memorial. I'm your host, Maria Miller, and I'm excited to be here for our inaugural episode. For those listening who are not familiar with the War Memorial, at 75 years old, we are a unique space. We offer incredible events here, from weddings, social events, memorials, showers, and cultural offerings, musical concerts, veterans-focused events, beautiful, spacious gardens, and all overlooking Lake St. Clair. And it's anchored by a 114-year-old home. So this, again, is our inaugural episode. So today we're discussing this 114-year-old mansion and the special work that we've been doing here. Here with us are a couple guests from Historic Surfaces. We have Tony and Mata Kartsonas, and I am thrilled to have you as our first guest to talk about some of the work that you've done here and some of the work that you have just done in your career. I think combined you have kind of an extensive background, so I'm excited to dive in and hear a little bit more about what you do. So welcome, Tony. Welcome, Mata.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So tell me a little bit about how you even got started in the line of historic preservation.
Well, I think we both arrived at it in a similar but different way. While being an undergrad in fine arts, realized that making it as just a fine artist was not going to really cut it. And so I happened to have the opportunity to work for one of my professors during the summer months, renovating kind of older buildings, and I just got the bug immediately, and then started working for a very old church decorating company. Took time off to do my master's degree in England, came back, worked for another firm, and we've had our company for the last 18 years now.
Yeah, and I think the similarity is that we were both interested in fine arts, but where it's a little different is I grew up working at flea markets in Chicago with my father, and sometimes going in summer to different markets. So I was always really was very interested in that sort of antique or vintage item and people around it, the market vibe, the feeling of waking up and at the crack of dawn and setting up a table and meeting people and the conversations. And I do think I then went into fine arts because it was my inclination and what I really wanted to study. And then it seemed a natural transition to then find myself with the opportunities to study painting conservation through my undergraduate degree in Chicago at the Art Institute, and then go to Florence. And then I ended up doing the same program that Tony did, the graduate program in York, England, for building conservation, site conservation, where they bring people in sort of mid-career, like after graduate school or after, like in their late 20s to 50s, really, the ages was incredible,
right,
from all over the world who have different different levels of expertise in paintings and building architecture and in metals and stone, and you sort of build this forum that we are still very much in touch with people now. We have a friend visiting today who was in the program with me from Canada, and Tony and I met because he did the program a few years before I did, and the folks in the admin, we all became pretty close with them, and they introduced us.
Oh my goodness!
Back in the States,
That's
so we had to go overseas.
You had to go overseas
to find someone in the Midwest.
That's right.
That grew up an hour and a half away.
Where we lived in the same town.
Yeah.
And we were doing the same work.
I'm from Chicago, and Tony's from Milwaukee, but he was living in Chicago when I met him.
See there, it's a small world.
Yeah.
It is truly a small world. Oh my gosh. So what was one of your first projects out, as you got started?
Mine was Texas.
The State Fair murals.
State Fair murals at Fair Park.
State Fair Park.
In Dallas. So Tony had worked on it, and I'll let him explain if he wants to, with his company that he was working with. But I received a job to work on the end of a phase of really beautiful murals describing or showcasing America's progress in transportation in Texas at Fair Park, 1933.
I think it was, yeah.
And it was an Italian artist who came, and he did all these amazing, very large, in a colonnade. They were discovered because someone was sandblasting to prepare to paint over again. And they realized they had painted over these murals about 9 times.
Oh, wow.
And in the beginning it was oil paint, then it was acrylic. So there was someone who, then they brought in a big project and they were able to remove all the paint. And Tony's side of the project was all those murals were destroyed in a fire. So he was part of a team that recreated the murals. So it happened to be we were on the same project, but different parts of it in Texas and Dallas.
And working for different employers.
Yes.
Wait, is that how you ended up meeting, or no? You met?
We
We met-
met over the phone
yes.
and through emails, and then
Was
we
there
eventually.
email back then?
There was an email. Our kids don't think there's an email back then, but there was email. And we met, and then we met out in Texas, in Chicago, and then you came out to see the project
Right.
when we first, yeah.
And then maybe fast forward to 18 years ago, the first project we did for our company
That's right.
was Rockcliffe Manor, which is a house, like a mansion overlooking the Mississippi River in Hannibal, Missouri. And it was kind of weird how we found out about it. It was a friend of a friend who kind of referred us.
To your brother.
Yeah, through my brother, actually, of all places. Nothing professionally, but what's amazing is the owner at the time, because it was operated as a house museum, he has since sold it and moved on, and we are still very dear
He's
friends.
one of our dearest friends.
Yes,
But it's the last place that Mark Twain spoke.
yes.
Prese-
When he visited
He's from
Hannibal.
that town. He's from Hannibal. So that's what the significance of that project was. And I was about 7 months pregnant with our daughter, who's now going to be 18, and removing, restoring historic wallpaper. It was just a very special opportunity
Yeah.
to be there.
Well, I would imagine each home or space that you go in, there's got to be something about that history that tugs at your heart, and that in many ways I could imagine a lot of them are meaningful to you. Is that?
Yes, and the guardians, the people who keep those spaces safe and open, the educators around those spaces. I mean, they often they're some of our closest friends. I think that's why we work together in those environments together so well. We both have that. Like, it's not the project; it really is what's going on around it.
Right,
of course, it's
right.
the brick and mortar, but it's really what it's carrying
But
forward.
there is occasionally when you go into certain buildings and you see, like, obviously one of the big reasons a lot of us get into this work is the admiration of the original craft and the respect for it and what it took to originally do it, and doing a lot of it ourselves, like knowing it's a process and how they were kind of unforgiving and kind of doing that process correctly. But I have to say, every once in a while when you see these like wow spaces that it just was done by like this incredible hand or done in a way that's just so beautiful. It just
they didn't sign it. They didn't need to be
but
known who they were.
that's what's so
It's
like
amazing.
fantastic. Like this many years later, like we still get excited about when we see those certain spaces, and you're like, wow, that's just amazing.
Or a
Yeah.
painting that's dirty.
Yeah.
That makes me happy.
Do you either of you have a special, like just a favorite project that you had?
I'll let you go first.
Recently, like I was saying, that we build a lot of important friendships through our work. And in Dallas, I met a conservator from Verona named Flavia Bonato, and we have collaborated together over the years, and she invited me out to work on a project that was near and dear to her heart that finally received funding in her village of Sona, and it's the oldest chapel from the 11th century, and so they had murals from the 12th century
12th and 13th
that were
century, I
covered
think,
up with 17th century plaster that we had to remove, which
Oh,
is
wow.
difficult for an American conservator, because you're like, it's from the 17th century, but we're removing that to reveal something even
Wow.
more that the townsfolk had never seen because it had been covered. And this chapel was where is now the cemetery. So because the water would come off this chapel, people thought it would make you would be very holy if you were buried there. So when they were excavating around it in order to restore the building, they found a lot of bones, of humans' bones. And so that project was so fascinating to me because I was working with a group of young adults who were in their 20s. They have a great mentorship program there. And I was also just exposed to what the culture was around there and looking at being part of something that was so old and special. So that's my favorite at this point that I can think of.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, mine's not as interesting as Italy, but no, actually, I think one of my favorite projects was early on. The American artist Grant Wood, did the American Gothic painting. We were luckily selected to do conservation treatment of this really unique paint and plaster decoration that he did on a sleeping porch in a house museum in Iowa. It's called Bruce Moore, and it was at a time where where people don't understand. Like, well, I'm sure they do, but we have the same challenges every other household does with young kids and making sure one of us is around. And the good and the bad of our work is we have to go wherever the projects are. But fortunately, the project worked out to be a summer project, and they were going to allow us to stay on the grounds of the estate in one of the guest houses. And the kids were at an age where 7 and 3, where we felt like, okay, well, they're a little old enough where they can maybe go into a summer school, and then we were able to both work together on it. And there again, it's about developing these relationships where there's a few people that we met during our time in Cedar Rapids that we're still very dear friends with, and one of them who's a specialist in regionalist painting like Grant Wood and some of the other artists, Marvin Cohn and Thomas Hart Benton. She still actually asks Mata to go occasionally to help clean paintings for private collectors.
Janelle McLean, yeah, a really special couple.
Yeah, and so they've become dear friends of ours. So, it's kind of like, I think you kind of measure how great a project is sometimes by how many friends you created and the lasting relationship you have from it.
And the talk about how people come through and then you can see the intent of the artist. That's something that's really important. I think where Tony and I hold on to a lot of or humble attitude, you can certainly, we're not creating what we're revealing. We're really just, I wouldn't say janitors of the art, but we are. We do bring it, we try and
Speak
help.
for yourself.
Well, we try and help reveal the original intent of that artist or that builder, and it's so satisfying because things get lost. A horizon line on a painting is finally visible, or the decorative painting on a wall, and certainly this building, there's so much beauty in here, and people walk in and they have so many memories, and that's so special to be part of. It never stops giving us goosebumps. We never feel like when we're talking about, like, the Italian project was so exciting for me because it was so old, but when Tony talks about Cedar Rapids, my heart just swells because our kids were part of it, and the relationships, and that sleeping porch is so amazing and unique for that artist that we're very fortunate.
Well, if there's one thing I did not hear, that the War Memorial was your favorite place.
Well, we're not finished.
We're not there yet.
So when we complete our work here, then we can talk about it
Okay.
in that.
All right.
In
Fair
the,
enough. Well, Mata, you talked about bones. Have you, discovered, that was quite a discovery. Have either of you had any paranormal experiences on any of these historic sites? Any ghost sightings? Anything?
Personally, I haven't, but I've worked with people who are very sure that they have. And I think, unlike Tony, I do believe that if they're telling me it's true, like they feel these things, that it's true. I don't know. I can't say I'm a believer, but I'm not a disbeliever. I just think I'm waiting for it to happen. They just don't think they can approach me.
I don't know if I'm entirely a disbeliever. It's just, for me to believe it, I'd like to experience it.
They're
And
not
I feel
gonna
like
watch
I've
They're
been,
ready now.
In 32 years, I've been in enough old houses and buildings where
You would have seen
it should have happened by now.
Well,
But
now they're ready for you.
Now they're ready. There you go.
There have been sightings and things here.
In
So
here?
our
I'm
staff,
sure.
our staff have stories. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So your industry seems, I guess, how large is it? I'm thinking it probably is kind of a niche business.
You're right. It is. It is. And we were talking about this earlier, Maria, that when it feels like a niche business when you talk to people who aren't in it, because they're like, I had no idea that was actually a job, and that sounds so great. But when you're in it, you're working so much with colleagues and getting information from people if it's something you're not experienced with, or if somebody's referring you. So for us, it feels very much like, because it's our whole our world or career, it doesn't feel as niche, but we realize it when we step
but it is
outside of
pretty
it.
insular as well,
Yeah.
because like let's say if you go to try to obtain a project that's a competitive bid or whatever, you're going to see all the same parties there. So it's kind of
It's like a high
there's no
school
kind of
reunion.
surprises like and there's not a lot of people doing like certain specific aspects of the work, like
They're
whether
more
it's
specialized.
decorative interiors like us, or people who are stone or masonry consultants. There's enough specialists out there where people kind of are aware of the select few
Right,
that are
right.
out there, which I guess is good and bad at the same time. But
I
it
have
seems
to
to work out pretty well.
I have to say that one of the benefits of being in our 50s and having
There is a benefit.
yes, that we get to be in our 50s, but also that when we started to seek this work out or this experience out, the education wasn't, at least in the States, as laid out. And now in the last 20 years, I would say 15 years, the programs for conservation of paintings or everything is very
Preservation, especially.
its preservation is
programs.
is more compartmentalized too. So when Tony and I were kind of trying to figure out, okay, we went to England for this program. I mentored under this painting conservator. We took this course. So we're piecing it all together, and the benefit of that was that we have this experience that can come into a building like the War Memorial and say, yes, we have that expertise. Yes, we have that. And I think that it's something I'm grateful for, because if we had found this a little bit later in our lives, we might only have one point of view. Not that they aren't very skilled, the people who are coming up in that. It's just that we kind of had to build it, in our generation itself. It feels like you had to kind of build that career differently.
Well, and I think there's times in our career you did some things where you don't think like it made sense with maybe what was your area of focus, but yet like Mata said, I think it pays dividends, because even if, let's say, you just focus specifically on painted finishes, but then you start understanding more about things like smaller objects or wood finishes, and it's not to say like a little knowledge is dangerous, but you do have this let's just say broader encyclopedia that you can draw from.
You were able to,
because
though.
you have the
were able to take
exposure. Yeah,
You were able to
exactly.
take those
Yeah.
chances. You weren't, because I noticed that with new people we're working with in the last maybe 10 years who might be 15, 20 years younger than us, they're very skilled, but they're in their lane. And I was like, wow, that's wonderful, but it wasn't our experience. So we had to kind of be, which is why I did the program in England. I was a painting conservator, and I wanted to learn about buildings. Where are the paintings going? What's behind that? What's behind the walls that we're working on? And I think that it's exciting still for us to learn. We keep learning.
Absolutely, and I think what's so exciting here for us is to have your level of expertise just local to us. And, as you know, this is our 75th year. We're 75 years old, so happy birthday to us.
Yes.
And at our annual gala this year, the proceeds are going to help restore,
It's fantastic.
start restoring the home. So, with that said, back when this home was originally given, I suppose, away, it was given to the Detroit Institute of Arts. And I know Tony and Mata, you're both familiar with that. What have you found as you're looking at here, looking in the rooms in this house? So we're in one of my favorite rooms right now, which is the library. I absolutely adore this room. The veterans room downstairs is probably maybe my first favorite. It's a tie. I love both of the rooms.
Has a special character,
Yeah,
that's for sure.
sure does. I think it's the original man cave down there. And the center, we're going to start some work on the reception room a little bit, because that's probably the easiest to get going. And then the dining room. So those are really the three rooms, a little bit in the entranceway. The French doors, the ceilings, the preservation work there. I've been having a hard time describing, are we doing preservation? Are we doing restoration? Are we doing repair? I feel like it's a little bit of all, and especially the ceilings. The ceilings, I feel like we could preserve, couldn't we? Because nobody can mess those up. But but the walls we need to be careful with, because true preservation.
I'm gonna mention something, and then I'll let Tony take this, because I know he's worked more here than I have. One of the incredible things about this building is that it breathes. The War Memorial, you can't really be too far from it and not have a memory from your parents, from your grandparents, from at your children taking ballet. When we mention it, only being Michiganders for 7 years, it's an icon. It's anchored into the Detroit metro area, and it's not easy to work in the different levels of intervention when you have something that's breathing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we really commend that you are always striving to preserve the history, but also offer the future. And that's a very tricky balance, but I think we're fortunate to be part of it, but your team is doing an amazing job.
I think just specifics of the house. I mean, each room has its own challenges, none of them unsurmountable. But I'd have to say that, while, we were originally hired to, do an assessment and kind of really look extensively at the conditions, what are some of the issues, what are solutions for those issues, and kind of create like a long-term plan, because you guys are trying to be, good caretakers of the property. And I feel that, unfortunately, with a lot of the changes, with ages, different owners, a lot of things will need to be restored rather than preserved. And it's mostly because, I think it's number one, it is the changing of the guard, how many times. But I think it's also probably, it's just natural age. And sometimes it just happens that, in an ideal world, you like things to last forever or as long as they can. But we are talking about, like, for example, in the living room and the dining room and the library, that, the ceilings, yes, some of the finishes date back to the original 1910 family era, but they have had 2 subsequent restorations since then, and also they've just aged to a point, also with small issues of water damage that, it's probably at a point where redoing it is better than trying to save it. And it's a hard balance, because you typically like to save everything you can, but when you reach a point, I wouldn't say of no return, but where it makes more sense for restoration versus, let's say, preservation, then, and you shouldn't think it's not preservation, because you're looking to kind of preserve the idea of the original intent of the room.
I like that.
And the restoration is really just the tool to achieve that. I mean, while doing the research, what was amazing was looking at the photographs of how the DIA thought that they would interpret the spaces, because they changed the use of the building to being this, mini museum, and how they wanted to stage it with furniture and paintings on the walls and the types of colors they used. And even though it was really interesting, they were thinking about it in a different way than how the family originally envisioned the house. And so it's kind of interesting. But, I'd say that overall things are in pretty good condition, with some things needing to be addressed. But, obviously it's a process, and it takes a while. But the fortunate thing is, when you have researched and looked at things, you're kind of informing the process. So you're not going at it blindly, or you're kind of understanding what you're dealing with, and it allows you to kind of make those good informed decisions, kind of long term, and establishing priorities, which is one thing we've looked at, trying to work with you and discuss, and everything, even regular care, even you guys even being open to having colleagues that are floor experts to come and look at your floor finishes to make sure they're good. What can we do to take better care of them? Because where you guys, where the War Memorial, I think, is a unique situation, is because you use it so much comparatively to, let's say, other house museums. And even though I think that's an incredibly positive thing, because I think there's something wonderful about a building not being so sacred that people can't use it and they can't enjoy it.
It becomes elitist, and it doesn't become part of the
But
community.
it creates its own set of challenges, because you have a lot more maintenance issues to consider. You have a lot more care issues to consider. There's more wear and tear. So it's just, it's finding that approach that works for you and how you guys use a building, and ensuring its longevity.
Right.
We're going to embarrass our daughter a little bit, but you don't have the war dances here anymore. But when she was a sixth grader, when there was the Harry Potter themed war dance, it was her first dance with a boy.
Aww.
It was so cool. It's just so. That's one memory.
Well,
So
spoiler alert.
They're coming back.
We're trialing.
Okay.
Yes. When is it? Next weekend? Our marketing director, Brett Pulte, is on the sidelines here, and I believe it's May 3rd. And yeah.
Well,
but
our 8th grade son will be happy about that.
the problem was that how everything was destroyed, and so and lack of chaperones. So assuming we get a good amount of chaperones,
That's very fair.
and
That's very fair.
so this is a trial basis. But yeah, the war dances could potentially live on.
Yes, great.
Have a second life.
I think it's important, your definition, Tony, or how you, all those words, conservation, preservation, restoration, it's accurate what you're saying. The entire building is an act of preservation. We look at the East and the West, the differences in how we historically have approached conservation and preservation. The East is more concerned with the ritual of what that building is used for. The West is insanely obsessed with the actual material being the original material. And so I think it's, when you can marry the two, it's a really fantastic way to carry on traditions, to create jobs. Mm-hmm. We get to work here. People learn how to do this to keep the technique going.
You're preserving, exactly, craftsmanship skills, people that have the ability to be able to do these things,
If we preserve one piece of wood for 300 years, that is not extending out to the community of how do you learn how to keep preserve. So it's a really...
Right.
You just continue giving, I feel like, the building. And so it's a fantastic opportunity for us to be part of it.
Yeah.
And it's just a wonderful thing that you are pushing to continually figure out how to be the best guardians you can.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that, because a lot of times we feel like this place is getting beat up. And and it has. And the whole idea of the new addition was to take the pressure off of this home so that we can start this
but that's where we
work.
applaud you that, the moment you got the new building up and running, you realize that, and then right away you're like, okay, we need to kind of divert attention now to the main house.
Right.
And
So Tony, you had wanted at some point, I recall, potentially wanting to have a class to teach others to restore maybe a piece of furniture. Is that in the works in any way, shape, or form? You seem awfully busy to me. So.
Yes, it just seems like our schedule this year is kind of a little more mixed up than normal. I wouldn't say it's necessarily anybody's fault, but
it's just regular life.
It's
you
just
have a
life.
daughter working at schools.
But I think the idea is like I've done some workshops already for both the Etzelford Estate and Fair Lane. And the one thing is, and it's not to say that I think people get bad information out there, but maybe they don't get the correct information. And I think there's something about, rather than watching it on a show like on HGTV, This Old House, whatever, I think being able to see it and it's something very tangible is a different learning experience,
you
of course.
Empower them to know that it's within your wheelhouse.
And I have to say, like the few times that I've done it, like when I'd get these emails like a few months later, like, oh my God, let's say we did one on wood refinishing. Oh my God, I felt so empowered that I went back home and I stripped a few doors and refinished them. And it just made me feel so good, because that's the idea, is that you're looking to hopefully just give them enough knowledge where they're going to feel comfortable to try it for themselves. And then you think about what that impact is. It's not only that they're bettering their homes, they're building confidence for themselves, but then also they're bettering their communities, because a lot of these people live maybe in up-and-coming neighborhoods, other communities that are historic districts or whatever. And then if they feel like, hey, we're going to watch someone like Tony or another individual who's maybe an expert in their field, that they're like, hey, if he's telling me this is the right way to do it, then we should try to do it this way. And so, yes, the intent is that we would like to start offering some workshops, because you're being very gracious to offer facilities here, and it's a convenient place where the facilities are here. And we'd like to get to a place where, just things that we feel people can step back and try to do for themselves, like
Tackle
wood
a
refinishing,
project.
simple methods of plaster repair, painting techniques to kind of better their painting skills, maybe even get more advanced, like some levels of decorative painting also.
We were invited twice. We were lucky enough to be included Detroit's Preservation Forum when they worked
with the city of Detroit.
And we were the only, I think, operating businesses doing this, because there were a few architects, and I don't remember. It was a few.
Yeah.
It was before. It was 4 years ago, last one we went to. But one of the things that kept coming up were in communities was the word preservation was really alarming, because it sounded like a lot of money. And as soon as if you buy an old home in a neighborhood that someone might want to turn into a historic district, or the threat of feeling like you had to not only talk to a contractor about changing something, but then you had to talk to an historic preservation expert. And so we just wanted to help break down that preservation is our specialty, but it really is a level of maintenance and repair, and to kind of take away that name so it stops being the roadblock but can be the open path to how do you invest in your home. And the tax breaks that people are getting, it can really, like Tony says, it's not just you investing in your home, it's you investing in your community if you're able to do that.
I love it.
Right, and it's not to say that obviously there are moments where you need specialists.
Sure.
But it's making that determination, and also economics make a big difference in some of the decisions you can make.
Absolutely.
And
Well, I have one final question.
Uh-oh.
What are the potential hazards of a husband and wife team working together? How's that been going so far?
I'll let you start.
You're still married, so it's got to be good so far.
We're coming up on our 20th wedding anniversary on May 8th.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you.
And we were lucky we were living in Chicago when we met and were engaged, but we had our wedding at the Pfister Hotel in Milwaukee, which was the first ceiling that Tony was on a team to restore. So it was very, very special. And the Pfister Hotel is fantastic in Milwaukee. And so what is it like? I'll tell you, it's still...
I like that she has to think about it.
Well, there's so many pluses. It's just, I think the challenge is that because of our work is travel, we don't spend enough time together. And our children are very tolerant of, sometimes it is one captain.
Of each of us running in and out of
One
the house.
captain is better on a ship, so running the household, it depends on if the other captain who comes home is following up with the same rules. I've only started traveling for work since I was about 47, so maybe 7 years, where I've been traveling for projects when the kids got up to a certain age where I felt comfortable doing it. So that's fun. It's fun to then leave, and then I miss them though after a week but I do think there's a lot of pluses because we wanted to do this together. We didn't fall into it by accident, and we chose it. So I see overall it's great, but we don't get to live together as much. Maybe that's why we're still married. We've really only been together 5 years.
Distance.
Distance.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's the secret.
Yeah.
Well, I think overall
It's the work that bonded us, though. This is how we met.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's what keeps
I think
us.
if our love for the same work wasn't there, obviously it'd be a lot more challenging. Because if it was just, let's say, Mata came from a business background, and then I just asked her to run books or whatever, I don't think it would be as successful. We'd probably make more money, but we wouldn't be as successful.
Yeah.
No, but I think it's I think the challenge is that kind of personal life work balance, and in some ways I think there's times we've gotten a little better about it, where there's a little better lines of communication, knowing that we're a little more open with our kids getting a little bigger, and
that has been a big change where they're taking responsibility.
And also it seems like projects that Mata and I, even though we cross paths with certain skill sets or certain things, Mata does definitely better than I do, and so
we each have our own specialties.
So it's been good that we've had some projects that can really utilize her skill sets even more than mine, and so it's just still always working and finding that balance. But I guess it makes it interesting as well.
20 years, it's a good.
It's just the picking up of the socks. I'm still working on the picking up of the socks.
Picking up of the socks.
Yeah.
Well, Tony, Mata, where can our listeners find you if they're interested in your work?
Well, probably the best place is on our website.
At the War Memorial.
www.historicsurfaces.com. And we're also on Instagram and Facebook, although I don't post very regularly because I am a little ancient. And
we're trying to.
Yeah, but that'd be probably the easiest way is finding us on our website. But yeah, we're really happy to kind of be involved with kickstarting things here again and helping you guys kind of re-envision the interiors. And
whoever gets to work in this space at the War Memorial is very fortunate. So we definitely, it's not lost on us. We're very happy. We're very happy to be here.
Well, we are truly grateful. Thank you for your time today and sharing a little bit of your past and present and future with us. And I'm grateful. And thank you all who have made it with us through the first episode. I'm thrilled to have you here, and I thank you for your interest. And as always, and as a nice reminder, feel free to visit our website, warmemorial.org, for a list of all of our upcoming events, as well as follow us on social media at the War Memorial. And we are on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. And leave a message, follow us, post, and share. Thanks again, and until next time.